Hotep family, Abibi Tumi. I'm back once again. This time around, we're going to learn about the Meshwesh and their rise from Cavalry Commando to Nsut Biddy. As always, like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to give it a few minutes. I'm going to start around the 6-minute mark. Meanwhile, listen to the Wula drums. Again, I'm going to get started at the 6-minute mark. So like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Also donate. The Cash App is rolling at the bottom of the screen. It's also in QR code format at the top left. I'm going to be getting started momentarily. That way we can give others the chance to come in. So we're going to get started. But before we do, I want to make it known that it is important to identify what is now called the Libyan Dynasty of Kemet. This involves the 22nd to the 24th dynasties. It's important to claim North Africa. So we are going to go over the beginnings of North African culture and people groups. I want to start off by making notes of Lake Chad. If you are actually studying the continent of Africa, you know about Lake Chad. You know about Lake Chad culture. It is a mother culture because it goes back all the way to tens of thousands of years when the Sahara was green. This is before the African humid period. And during that period, we have rock art. Some of you might be familiar with the rock art of North Africa. It dates back to 12,000 years. Again, the Bradshaw Foundation provides academic resource for the rock art of North Africa. So does UNESCO. Among the art that they connect to science are the round head paintings. We have the horned goddess, and we have the 37 warriors. The horned goddess is recognized in Africana studies as being the beginnings of Het Heru and the origins of Het Heru in Kemet. The 37 Warriors is a piece of rock art that represents the activity and the culture of North Africa. This would be in the area of Algeria, present-day Algeria. And again, just like the rock art of South Africa, we have scholars who connect it to science and spirituality. And I say that to remind people that the rock art that is in Africa has technological and spiritual meaning. I want us to move on to a discovery that was in Libya.
The Sahara. This is the largest desert in the world. It's also one of the hottest places on Earth, and one of the most remote. Italian archaeologist Dr. Savino Delernia of the University of Rome has been driving for 2 days. Ahead of him lies his destination, the Akakis Mountains in southwestern Libya. It's a North African country. To the west is Algeria. To the east, Egypt. This inhospitable terrain has driven away all but a handful of Tuareg nomads, but it was once home to a family who mummified their child. It all began 40 years ago with the discovery of the little mummified boy, Wan Mahujaj. He took his name from the rock shelter where he was found. We think of Libya's population today as largely Middle Eastern, yet the team still believed that thousands of years ago this area was inhabited by black Africans from the south. But apart from some rock art depicting black hunters, archaeologists had no proof of this. The mummy changed all that.
The significance of the black mummy is very great. We have the first evidence of black people in the area, that it was supposed to be, but we hadn't had evidence of this.
This was the beginning of an extraordinary quest that would ultimately reveal an unknown African culture. The Wan Mahujaj rock shelter is a simple place, a ledge just wide enough to provide shade from the midday sun. Savino has returned to the rock shelter, where he meets Tuareg tribesman Mr. Ramadani, who witnessed the discovery of the mummy. They focus on one small area, the place where Savino's predecessor, Professor Mori, actually found the mummy.
It was still already visible because it was partially brought to light by natural erosion. So we have to imagine that the exact position of the Wan Mahujaj mummy should be somewhere just here.
When a small sack came to light, no one was prepared for what it contained.
They opened this sack and they found the mummy inside. So it was really amazing.
Soon after he died, this young boy was put in a fetal position, then embalmed, and placed in a sack made of antelope skin. The sack was then insulated by a layer of leaves. This careful preparation protected his small body from the elements for the next 5,500 years. The Italian archaeologists knew they had found important evidence. The shape of the boy's skull suggested he was black, and if he was, this could rewrite the history of mummification in Africa. The team returned to Rome to have the mummy analyzed. Dr. Giorgio Manzi of the University of Rome is the world's foremost expert on human remains in Libya, and his department boasts an impressive collection of Libyan skulls.
The reason why the members of the Italian team in the 50s inferred that the child was a black child, a Negro child, is mainly a consideration of his face, especially the length here of the root of the nose, or also here the moving forward of the mouth.
The mummy's teeth also revealed his age at death.
When the Italian team first examined the Wan Mahujaj child, they looked at the teeth and found that it was very young. Especially using X-rays, it was easy to determine the exact age, looking at teeth still in the bone, in the alveolus.
So the team had established that Wan Mahujaj was a black, 2.5-year-old boy. But it was the results of the carbon dating which were so amazing. Wan Mahujaj was 5,600 years old. This made him the oldest black mummy ever found in Africa. But where did he come from? Who had mummified this boy 1,000 years before the Egyptians supposedly invented mummification in Africa?
All right, I want to move on to another content creator's take on Libya. If you are not a follower of Grassi C, I would suggest you follow him as well.
The biggest country in Africa is easily Algeria. And why so many of them are dark skinned. Now, the obvious part is that these people who come from the central part are natives to this land, and that's just what the people look like. Located just here in the corner, next to an area that was known as a gateway to Timbuktu and all these other kingdoms. The interesting thing about these populations is that they're documented by several different people, and they describe them as extremely dark skinned, and in some cases, depending on the time, they were either poor or rich. This again all depended on which time you're talking about, whether they were captured or just free. Now, this is the thing about Algeria. It is so huge that it's actually a place where you will find deep connections with Morocco, and then you'll find a separation somewhere. So I want to read something from the 1600s that describes the native population. The Kingdom of Morocco, together with Fez, contains the whole country known to the ancients by the name of Mauritania Tingatina, so called from its chief city Tangier, whose inhabitants were called by the Greeks Mauricige, by the Latins Maori, that is, Moors, according to their color, which was either olivaster or black. When they got there, one of the things that he noticed was that the Moors looked somewhat different from each other, like in different sections, at least what he called the Moors. All dark skin, but having variants of Middle Eastern DNA in him, and he realized that with those variants, he could actually tell the Sahawari, who are located in near the Moroccan areas and also the Algerian western areas, they tended to have much more Black African DNA. And he made the assumption that these are some of the oldest Moorish people who existed. When discussing the people of Egypt, this is what the author had to say. So he said, the Turks in Egypt are either of civil or martial lift, living voluptuously, having little or no business but as starts. But the native Egyptians follow pasturage and husbandry. The Arabians live by downright robbery. The Moors, Negroes, and the Jews manage trading and merchandise. So do most of the inhabitants of Cairo. And so this is where one of the problems lie, which is who are the Moors in this case? You've got Egypt here. So Moor definitely doesn't mean Muslim in this case. These are definitely racial people. So you can see there that Turks are already stated, Arabs are stated, native Egyptians are stated as something completely different than the Moors. And then they say the Arabians live downright robbery, right? And then the three that are grouped together, the Moors, the Negroes, and the Jews, are the businessmen of this area with other inhabitants. I think to some degree there's some sloppiness in their writing, which I think they assumed that everybody knew what they were talking about when they were saying these things. Like everybody would agree, like Negroes are this, Jews are this, Moors are this, Arabs are this. They did not think in their head that they would need to explain these groups in a far deeper way. For these people, the word Moor ethnically stretches beyond Mauritania, and it heads all the way to Egypt. Another place that's important in central Algeria is a place called Adrar. And as you can see, the inhabitants of that area look like this. It is, again, interesting that the people who occupy and again, it has to do partially with the fact that Algeria is so huge.
I want to point out the fact that it is important to grasp that North African identity and territory is under attack. And this is the very reason for this live stream. And as you just heard, Grassi C, Moors, although it is a exonym, is an identifier for black. Now we are going to move into a controversial topic. The way I'm going to define this topic may compel people to give pushback, but anyway, the topic of the Hyksos is very controversial, and I want to point out that mainstream academia is wrong about the Hyksos. One of the main reasons that they're wrong about the Hyksos is that they disagree with their most early source for describing the origins of the Hyksos. So with that being said, that in of itself is problematic, and I want you guys to all indirectly or directly take note of the information that is on the screen. If you need to take a screenshot, take a screenshot. And this is amid the ancient Egyptian controversy that still goes on to this very day. Here we have Manetho calling the Hyksos foreign invaders, but the ancient Egyptians are not supposed to be black. So now we have a lot of confusion and a lot of inconsistency with identity in the ancient world as told by Manetho when it comes to the Hyksos. Another one is academia admits that the origins of the Hyksos are uncertain, and I will get into the origins of the Hyksos. I'm already getting into them. This is why I include them into a lesson with the Meshwesh. You will see why momentarily. The dual bust that is mistakenly and erroneously identified as Amenemhet III is not actually so. I want to also point out that while academia calls the Hyksos not only invaders but foreign, you have a original reproduction of the stele that is found in Hotep II's tomb. Here it is. If you pay close attention, they have something in common with the Kemet U. I want to begin in the 14th dynasty as part of my methodology to identify the Hyksos. I want us to pay attention to a particular elite in the 14th dynasty. I'm going to leave this here momentarily so you can take mental note of it. You can indirectly take note of it, take screenshots. But as you can see, academia records that Nehesi is a son of a Hyksos king. And they're not for sure about that, but this is odd that they include that in their academic references. You can also see the Canaanites within the 14th dynasty. The end of the 14th dynasty with Nehesi marks the beginning of the Hyksos control of Lower Kemet. I want us to pay attention to the 12th dynasty. When we study the Hyksos and try to determine their origins, we also need to study the previous dynasties as well. So here we have it. We have heads of 12th dynasty prisoners. As you can see, again, they have resemblance to the Kemet U. I also want to again focus on the dual bust that is oddly identified as Amenemhet the third. Let's take a closer look at the 12th dynasty prisoners bust. This is a dual bust of 12th dynasty prisoners. As you can see, the nose and the lips are as African as can be. Again, I want to point out that when we look at this dual bust, we see something different. We see something that is distinct. We are told that it is Amenemhet the third's bust, but it is not. I'm going to leave this here for a minute so you can look over it. I will go over it momentarily. This is, of course, based on academia as well. Wikipedia gives us a reference for the Hyksos. I want it to be known that whenever you do research on the Hyksos, the Hekakasu. This image oddly pops up when you do a web search inquiry for images in connection to the Hyksos. If this was not a Hyksos bust, why does it pop up every time you look up Hyksos under images? I want us to take a closer look. If you look at it, it is far different from the traditional representation of the Nsut Biti. One thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the metaneture that is on the bust, and we're going to compare it to the cartouche or the Ren of Amenet the Third. All right, so when we look at Amenemhet the Third and his Ren, we see something that is different than depicted on the dual bust that academics credit to be his. The one on the dual bust has Kepra and Amenemhet the Third has the feather of Ma'at. You can see other differences. You can see the prow, pictorial. So there is a difference, and we can say that the bust does not belong to Amenemhet the Third. Again, here's another example. I also want us to examine what the French say about the origins of Cameroon. And this is included in my methodology of determining the origins of the Hyksos, since academia is uncertain. And as you can see in bold, legends of later peoples claim that the Sao were descendants of the Hyksos who arrived in the area in several waves. And this is based on a French scholar, the publication that mentions the origins of the Sao being brought on by the Hyksos is in prehistoric times to the 19th century. This is a publication about Cameroon's history. So there you have more scholarship that pinpoints a possible origin for the Hyksos. And as we go on, you are going to see my reasoning for calling the Hyksos Africa's shepherd chiefs. One thing I will let you know is that Asiatics did not gain control of Kemet until the Black Persians in 525 BC. In 525 BCE. The Black Persians are half African and half Asiatic. The region from Canaan to Assyria to Black Persia was Afro-Dravidian, and other races of people do not come about until long after the New Kingdom time, or during the New Kingdom time. I will get into that as well. Now we are going to get into the Meshwesh. We are going to get into the Meshwesh and the Libu. I want to emphasize that the Meshwesh were black, and they differ from the Tamahu that is depicted on the Book of Gates. And we get this information from the Penn Museum publication. The name of this publication is Egyptians and Libyans in the New Kingdom. As you can see, they give distinction to native Libyans and non-native Libyans. The Meshwesh are the cavalry and pastoral cultural men. They started as the Hyksos and then became cavalry commandos and mercenaries who eventually were implemented into the Commandos army. And then they rose to the status of Nsut Biti. Before I go into the dynastic period of the Meshwesh, I will once more reinforce the identity of Moor. The word Moor is a exonym. It is not an additionist word. This is why I reinforce Meshwesh. The Meshwesh later become the Moors, based on the perspective of Romans and medieval Europeans. As you can see, I have 3 references that break down the identity of Moor, and they all consistently tell us that the Moors is a black identity as told by the Romans and the medieval Europeans. Now, I want to be clear that Moorish identity does later begin to change, but that's the point of an exonym. We have plenty of evidence of who the Moors are, and they are also regarded as the blacks of North Africa. So no doubt about that. Now we are going to get into the Meshwesh Dynasty. Here we are looking at the first Nsut Biti of the 22nd Dynasty. He is known as Shoshang the First. What we are looking at is a AI reconstruction. So again, Shoshang the First was the first Nsut Biti of the 22nd Dynasty. He unified Canaan and Kemet. He reunited. This is a reunification of not only Lower and Upper Kemet, but also Canaan. So we know Shoshang the First as a legendary Meshwesh ruler of Kemet. We also know that he reasserted the tradition of the Apis bull, the black bull. As you know, the Apis bull is important for Kemetu identity. I want to note that Shoshang the First installed his very own son as a regent. A regent ruler of Kemet. I will put the first son of Shoshang the First was a high Saba of Amun. I want to also mention Osorkon the First. This is a reconstruction of Osorkon the First based on AI. When we look at academia on Osorkon the First, we know that he is known as the Golden King. He also united Kemet and Canaan. Again, he was known as the Golden King or the Gold King. During his reign, there was 35 years of peace. He is the builder of the Bastet Temple. I want to let it be known that Bastet was a important deity during the Meshwesh Dynasty. I want to let it known that, or I want to let it be known that all things come to an end. So the mismanagement of the gold during this time, during the reign of Osorkon I, led to the decline of Kemet. I will leave this up here momentarily. And on through this time, you have Osorkon II, who is known as the Silver King, who attempts to restore Kemet. Again, I want to reinforce the blackness of all these Meshwesh Nsut biddies. And unfortunately, Osorkon II came to an end, again based on mismanagement of resources and obviously betrayal. This is the beginning of the decline of the Meshwesh Dynasty. This is towards the end of the 22nd Dynasty to bring on the 23rd Dynasty. As you can see, Kemet begins to become de-unified. It begins to fracture based on the failures of Osorkon and his successors. And I want to know that at this time, the Meshwesh were engaging in conflict with the Kushites. I want to make note of Iuput II. He's regarded the last king of the 23rd Dynasty. He allies with King Pi. I want to be clear that the 24th Dynasty is short-lived, but one last time I want to emphasize the 23rd Dynasty and that it was ruled by many kings. One of those was Petabast the first, and Osorkon the fourth was the other. This was a split kingdom in Kemet. Now, while you have Ayuput II negotiating with King Pi, you still have conflict. And this conflict involves not only the Kushites, but the Assyrians as well. So the Kushites come and save Kemet from the Assyrians. And the 24th dynasty, that only lasts 12 years, comes to an end at this time. And it begins to be taken over by the 25th Kushite dynasty. So I am going to close out momentarily. I am going to close out momentarily. In the meantime, like, share, and subscribe. This covers the Meshwesh Dynasty of Kemet. Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the Cash App. I do, in fact, take donations. I will be returning soon with another live stream, so stay tuned for that. I will be uploading more content as well in between time. Other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the live chat. If you happen to see this after the live stream, feel free to leave the question or comment in the comment section.